Today I'm talking with Josh Kinser, and Josh is a natural storyteller. He's kept me entertained for many a night in Iraq just telling stories. So it's always a pleasure just talking with Josh. So thanks for talking with me today.
Absolutely, man. I remember. I can always remember back in my high school track coach when I graduated gave me a compass, and it was like, storytellers often get lost. Keep this with you to try to keep you on the map at least. But yeah, man, good to see you. And sorry I missed the deactivation. I would, we had made it the year prior, but there was a lot going on that week. We just couldn't figure it out.
Getting back.
Yeah. It was crazy though. Like last year when we went back to that reunion, just like, I don't know. The one thing, because I've been seeing the evolution of warfare kind of happen in Ukraine, right? Like the drones and things are going. And I mean, like when we went to 573 and met with those guys, that's what they wanted to tell us about was all the drones, right? It was just drones. It was like, well, we got this drone for this kind of reconnaissance, this drone for this. And but it kind of broke my heart because I was talking to the intel guy, which that was the HUMINT was where I made my bang for my buck, and pretty much the intel officer was telling me that the Army's almost completely getting away with it. Like they're transitioning their intel to where they just want to use drones and reconnaissance, and really the HUMINT side of it is delegated out through different. But I don't know. He said, yeah, the stuff that you guys were doing, it's not in our wheelhouse anymore.
That is so bizarre to me. Actually, this is a great segue into that. Like you were saying, you did a lot of HUMINT collection for us, and actually, there's so much to even talk about with you. Let's get started with that. You were a 19 Delta. You were a cavalry scout when you came to 573. But when we got overseas, it turned out that you had spoken a little bit of Arabic, and that turned out to be very useful. So why don't you lead into that and just tell us how you got into collecting intelligence, because you became really central to the intelligence for the fight for 573.
It was, and don't get me wrong, there was a lot of times where I did get a little bit of flack for, it wasn't official, right? We just kind of made this thing up, kind of like, hey, what is this guy doing over here? And then as you start to get results, you're like, hey, just don't kick a winning horse in the ass. But like, I'd been there prior, and really the way the Arabic came about was my unit, when I got to Germany, they were all in Kosovo, and I was doing pull-ups, and, I was like with the rear D waiting for them to get, because they got called back from Kosovo. First sergeant came by, I was like, hey, Kinser, you went to college, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. He's like, get out of here, you're going to Arabic school. And I was just like, what? And I was the only enlisted. It was a bunch of like, captains and majors and so that Arabic there was just like if you went to French or Spanish class. Like I was golden if I went to the tea shop. Oh man, if I went to the library, I knew exactly what to ask. Unfortunately, I never went to a tea shop or a library in Iraq, and so when we got to Iraq, we were about 4 months after the initial invasion. Man, it was a lot different back then. There wasn't the infrastructure. The colonel had an interpreter, but other than that. So one day, I was on QRF, and basically I got called down by the sergeant major and colonel, and they were like, hey, we got this detainee. We need you to talk to him. And I was like, what? You want me to do what? And so I ran back and got my dictionary, and my my buddy, I remember John Taylor, he was my section sergeant at the time. He's like, "What do they have you doing?" I was like, "Apparently, gotta like interrogate and question this guy." Yeah, and I got thrown in the deep end. I mean, there was a lot of this stuff, and so the battalion commander at that time, it was Colonel Newell. He just kind of was like looking at me, and he was like, "When did you learn to do this?" And I was like, "Oh, sir, you know, I don't." So I got to play around with some stuff, and then right after that, where I really got taught the nuts and bolts was I got attached to the 10th group. And so we were in that unit, we were the only dismounted platoon and light platoon for a heavy brigade. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, we had tankers that literally had never been on a tank. They moved the tankers to Humvees but so we were essentially 10th group, and we were in Muqtadiya, so Diyala River Valley, same place, like same people. We were basically their pit bulls and their, you know, cordon and everything. And so basically because I was skinnier and I could climb, I got to be in the dismounted sections. And, you know, really, like, as we started doing this, I mean, they were just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to separate these guys, and, you know, you're going to find out this and this. And there was a guy, oh my God, what was his name? He was the craziest dude in the world. He was like an Avenger on the 10th group. But he went through and taught me literally what to do, how to, I mean, just the whole process. And so, I mean, we were attached to him for, I don't know, 2-3 months. And that's really where I learned, you know, the basis of everything for what we would do. And so, again, it was, I have to credit Captain Few because it was during JRTC. We came into some deal, and I didn't know Captain Few very well. I mean, I talked to him a bit, and I started talking Arabic, and he was like, "Time out, what?" And so that's where he kind of, you know, but it was a strange way to kind of get to it, and I don't think I could have done it without being attached to 10th group at that, and learning I mean, because dude, we didn't fire a shot for 2 months. I mean, this was like back in the, I mean, we kidnapped people nonstop every single night. It was just kidnapping people. How many people were going to kidnap tonight? And I mean, it got to the point, I don't think I'm not kidding. It was like every night we were out. And these were guys that were tougher. Like, we'd have to go and walk, you know, they drop us off. We'd walk like 5 miles to get set up. And a lot of them, you know, Rashid Khan, never caught him. He was one of the deck of cards that they handed out. But I think it's 22 missions I went on after him. And so there was a lot of big guys like that, you know, it took some, but it was that was a really, you know, I was like, damn, I'm getting to do exactly what I joined the Army for. And, you know, it was really cool. But, yeah, you know, learned a lot. Like, that's when we stopped. No kicking in the doors. You sneak in, you step over everybody, you find who you want in bed, and you get out. And at the same time, learning the process of interrogation and everything from playing good cop, bad cop to, you know, the threat of pain, and, you know, the threat of pain, keeping somebody up and making them tired, and just those little nuances.
Mm-hmm. And so,
clear, I said the threat of pain. I didn't. It's the threat of pain, not pain.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's the anticipation of something is way more useful than the actual event itself.
It was actually brought up. You know, that was what they were like. Look, man, you know, you see torture in the movies. Torture doesn't really work. Once you introduce pain, then, you know, because they've worked with all these different countries that don't have the same, you know. Once you introduce that pain, you have to keep introducing more pain. And so it spirals out real quick once you do that. But that threat of is it's a lot for a mind to go through.
Mm-hmm. And so when it came to 573, you ended up in Alpha Troop shortly before we left. And I remember my first interaction with you actually was when you had me on remedial PT because I was a fat boy, and you decided, hey, all this running stuff isn't really working, or I don't know, maybe it's just a hot summer day. So you took us out to do combat Pilates for fat boy PT, and I was just like, it was like nothing I had experienced in my Army career to that point. I was like, what the hell is this?
What did we do?
I don't even remember, but it was like, a lot of planking and like other Pilates poses. Yeah. And because I mean, it's core structure. Like it's legit stuff, but it was all
I was always big on planking, throwing things. I always liked, kettlebells and throwing. And and I always, it's just like I'll remember this. I ran track in college and I was like in the best shape of my life. And the Irish guys on the team were like, hey, let's go play soccer. And that zigzag, I was so sore I could hardly walk like the day after. And that's kind of what the combat PT, hitting the ground, getting up, like burpees are so good and things like that. Because, it's just like football. Nothing, if you can run as fast as you can, but then unless you get used to getting your butt up off the ground after getting knocked down. So that was my first interaction with you, huh? Oh, man, I probably made you guys throw rocks and jump off trailers or, Of course, that kind of PT backfired me when Cole broke his leg in a spiral fracture.
Oh, no. It was good stuff, though. It was different. And, it was the reason I bring that up was just it was my introduction to you as being an alternative thinker. Like someone that thinks outside the box and brings new things in. And those skill sets ended up being incredibly valuable when we went downrange. Just being able to be flexible and think about different stuff.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. 573 in the 82nd was a lot looser than, I couldn't have done that with you guys at the old unit. I mean, they would have been like, this isn't in the manual, or this isn't, we have to do side straddle hop, and it was very regimented. I don't know if I could have survived in a non-war army. I remember telling you I always hated you can't take a noun and add IZE. I'll never forget. Like I'm on this airfield, and they're like, "Hey, go palletize this stuff," and I'm like, "What? You palletize it? That doesn't make any sense." And I would come to soon find out that there's a lot of words like that in the Army that just sort of.
I want to set the scene because what you're talking about. I want to set the scene for, literally everyone else who was not there. We're sitting on a screen line, so we're sitting on top of a house in a row of houses by a canal, and we're overlooking the city of Bakuba, and it's being assaulted by the Strikers, 25th ID. It's Arrowhead River. It's one of the biggest parts of one of the biggest operations in Iraq at the time. There's shit going off over the hills, and I'm sitting on top with binoculars and Staff Sergeant Kinser, and he is going off saying you can't just add IZE to a word and make it into a verb. You cannot make it palletize. If I'm going to palletize, what if I want a sandwich? Is making a sandwich-atizing?
Yeah, I put my pants on in the morning, I pantize.
It's so surreal watching IEDs explode in the distance, listening to a lecture about English language.
I know it was bananas, man. It just didn't make sense to me. Of course, the Army really doesn't care, but it just didn't make sense to me. I haven't told anybody that in a long time, but I remember I used to get chuckles out of you guys. You all were like,
It was just the surrealness of Iraq. That part is hard to explain to anyone who was never there. And, even in a different unit, you get to a level of surrealness where you don't really know what reality is. Like, we've talked in these interviews about Checkpoint 164, which was a checkpoint down the road below Zagania. And we would sit out there watching for ambushes, car bombs and IED placers, and we'd sit there for hours at a time. I forget what a shift was. I think it was 8 to 12 hours, and you'd be sitting in a Humvee with like 4 people, and it was fucking miserable. And but when we'd go with Sergeant Kinser, we'd have Sergeant Kinser story out. And so if you were doing a patrol around the Humvee or on the gun watch, and you just gonna hear all these crazy stories while you're sitting there just watching out for snipers and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, that was always like as bad as it sucked. Just telling stories, and you know, you get to know your gunner and your driver. I mean, when you're just sitting like beside these people for hours on end, you know. You know, you remind me of a story. I haven't. This isn't a really funny one, but I haven't thought about this in a while. But at checkpoint 164, I was with Parker and Lynch one time, and we had this was towards the latter, you know, not the end, because I would have been with you guys then, but we had the Iraqi army captain had moved into one of these houses, and I'm like, it's my turn up on the gun, so I've got, you know, Lynch is on the radio, I think, and Parker's taking a nap, and I see this guy crawling through, you know, like I see him, and then I lose it, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, oh my God, safety off, fire the 240. You know, we found some blood. He probably got pulled off or whatever. But what I didn't find out until the next day is that one of my bullets hit the road and skipped into the Army commander's house, hitting his pregnant wife in the stomach and killing her unborn child.
Oh, shit.
And, you know, that one was like, I haven't thought about that. But that one, you know, is one of the ones that I just felt, you know, like crap, you know. I mean, what would I have done, you know, but it's just, and the reason I bring that up is those are the little things that happen in that chaos that you just, you know, it just, chaos creates havoc and more chaos.
It's so tough. There's so many situations like that. Like you just reminded me of one where you might have even been on a patrol with us. We were right outside the Zagania patrol base, right outside, like maybe a block away. And there's a family, and they had a young daughter, like maybe 4 years old, and she'd been killed by a stray bullet. And they had come down, it had arced in, and it had hit her. She'd been running like at night in the house, in the compound, and it hit her in the head and killed her. And we ended up talking to the man of the house, and he was trying to tell us about it. Because, you know, he came out during the patrol, said, hey, I lost my daughter a couple of days ago. And it was a thing, like, you're so close to the patrol base, what happened? And so we did the investigation, and maybe you weren't there because I remember I was talking to them because I don't recall Arabic. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe you weren't because I knew the most Arabic, which wasn't a lot, but I remember and I asked him if I could see the bullet because he still had it, and I just wanted to see if it was like, you know, NATO or Warsaw, just to try and, I don't even know why, because it's like I want to do something for this father, I don't know what to do. And he showed me the bullet, and it turned out it's a NATO bullet, but it's a 240, you know, or a sensitive from a 240, basically. But it was being so close to our patrol base, it couldn't have been something that we had shot. And it just arced in just right. Everything was right. It was completely accidental. And it was so surreal because, like, I didn't have enough Arabic to really, like, there's that moment where I remember, I was like, do I give the bullet back to the father, you know, or do I keep it? Like, what do I do? Like, I know it killed his little girl. I don't even have the language to say anything more other than like, Asif, I'm sorry, Asif, you know, like.
Yeah, you just remind me, you might have been with me on this one, but this is probably the hardest thing I had to do because one, I wasn't prepared to ever do this, and then I didn't have enough. So the checkpoint that killed the guys in April, where we had the
that was 164.
The one in Guba that blew up in the bus stop. And so when that happened, you know, our guys, we had several killed, we had several wounded, but there were some Iraqi kids playing that 2 of them were killed instantly. 1 of them was alive, and they put on the bird. Right. So this is like, what was this? April?
Yeah.
Yeah.
March 25th.
Okay. Yeah, March. So then we're talking, I think it was August. This is way down the road. We are back in Guba because remember we had to take it over like 17 times. And I'm with Barnes and the Iraqi army, and I walk in, we're going to each house. And I walk into this house, and this guy jumps up and just runs at me. And so I see this happen at the corner of my, I mean, I don't know what's happening. I'm like, so the Iraqi army guy goes to grab him, Barnes steps in front of me, and he's like, no, him, like, basically saying he knew me. And he's like hugging me. And I'm just like, okay, what is happening? And he said, I finally seen you again. I talked to you. You're the one I talked to when they put my son on the helicopter. Where is he? Is he alive? Is he? And I'm like, oh my God. And that kid died on the helicopter ride to Warhorse. No one had ever told him. And so I look at him, and his entire family's up. I see the mom. I see everybody, and the Iraqi army guy's like, it was one of the lieutenants, and he was just kind of like, do you know what happened? And I said, I just looked at this guy and I said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your son never made it. And so then the whole room starts crying. Everybody's out, and they start calling me on the radio. They're like, hey, where are you guys at? I'm like, give me a minute. Like, hey, we got to go to the next house. I'm like, give me a minute. And, y'all don't understand what I'm dealing with here. And that one was difficult, man. And I just think about, like, he had no idea that his son, what did they do with the body? Like, what? I mean, I don't even, and I get it, right? This body shows up in Warhorse. Here's an Iraqi kid. Like, it's not like there's a driver's license on him, but that one was I remember that exact moment. When I saw Barnes, I saw him in Arizona, and we were talking about that. That was like, it was like shitty, and when you don't have any words, maybe it was more simple that I could just say it, but.
Yeah. Like the father, I remember I told him sorry, and I said, Inshallah, and he just says Inshallah. And it's like, and that's kind of how I describe Iraq. If someone wanted to know what Iraq is, it's Inshallah, God willing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, Guba. God.
That place, I hate it. You reminded me, because I kind of lost it during the recovery after the bombing. It was suicide bombing, killed 4 soldiers, and they were very, very close to me, and I kind of lost it. When all the women came out, and they were wailing and coming out at us, and we thought maybe it was a follow-on attack or ambush or something, and I remember running down to the other screen line, and I was just going to light up the entire crowd. And it was only Captain Few that stayed my hand doing that, because he had still had the wherewithal to realize that it was what it was. But it turned out it was, they were bringing more wounded. There had been more wounded to us, and it may have been that child. But they wanted us to, like, treat them, and they had no way to, like, how do you go up to people who've just been attacked? So they put the women out front, hoping that we wouldn't react, and, like, just that whole situation, I
hated Cuba. It was.
They call it wicked problems. There's
I made some bad decisions in Cuba that. Luckily, I dodged, but some really bad decisions. That place was such a hotbed for Al Qaeda guys. It was just.
That Mukisa, right next door to it, was the capital of ISI, Islamic State of Iraq, proto-ISIS. You guys went to dinner with them. The infamous dinner. I believe you were there.
I was in the dinner. Yes,
you told him that this right was
I mean, I knew who several of those guys were. Like, I knew them. They were. I mean, you're talking about guys like that. I mean, we're pretty closely tied to the head of ISIS, as ISIS is. ISIS hadn't quite been formed yet. It was still part of Al Qaeda in Iraq, which is crazy because we were there when al-Zakari basically got a talk from bin Laden about being too violent. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but basically bin Laden was like, dude, you got to quit killing Muslims. And al-Zakari was like, forget you. And I mean, he created ISIS. So that's the kindergarten version of what happened there. But as that was happening, you know, there was several guys that we were going after that was, it's just kind of like how the Taliban and Al-Qaeda work together. They marry, you know, so bin Laden's son, who is not dead, no matter what they say, bin Laden's son is married to the head of the Taliban, his daughter, right? And that's what they were starting to do with Zakari. So some of these guys that I was sitting across at that dinner, I was like, there might be poison in this. And I remembered, I mean, you know, because it was all in there. I made sure I saw somebody eat out of every pile of food before I took a bite. But you know, that one was
you know, that
was an interesting dinner.
It's something that I haven't heard a lot of people bring up about, just like the fight in Iraq, but especially out where we were in Diyala. A lot of that, you know, Zarqawi, he was killed shortly before 573 rotated in, and he was killed out, I forget where, but it was by Balat Roofs. It wasn't far from there, in a small farm. So he had ties, but then he'd bring in would bring in fort fighters that would intermarry into the local tribes and then use those marriage ties as a way to manipulate.
Yeah.
So a lot of the tribes that we were fighting against didn't necessarily want to fight us, but they'd been brutalized and then locked into these tribal customs through marriage to become enemies to the coalition. It was such a strange, intricate social way.
And you know, you had the infrastructure there already because you had these guys trying to kill Saddam and his sons and you know, all that. I think Zarqawi was actually killed. Was he killed right before us?
Yeah, I think it was like June.
Okay,
I mean, it was
right.
Just before, yeah.
So, but I had some buddies in Delta that chased him around a whole lot, and they estimated that we had actually caught Zarqawi 3 to 4 times prior. Just nobody, you know. I mean, it's not like he's handing his license over and been like, "You got me," you know. Whether that's true or not, but they didn't know. That's what they thought. And you know, the structure of that, you're right. I mean, it was so difficult. That was the thing that was so difficult to manage in Iraq because you had tribal leaders, you had elected officials, you had appointed officials like Mukhtars, you had religious, and everybody thought they were in charge. And that intermingling is what made it, you know, like you said, with the marriage ties and that. Yeah, that was. But those guys that I said, I mean, there was 3 guys in particular, and my job in that meeting was just really, I didn't talk, I just listened. And so Captain Few and the others, they were kind of talking and doing it, and I just shut up, didn't let anybody know, you know, that I spoke Arabic. I mean, I saw those 3 guys, and I was like, oh, I know who you are. Like, never saw them again, never got a chance at them again, but I shared some rice and chicken with them. But
let's one thing I'd like to talk about, let's rewind a little bit. So one of the big enemies that we ended up fighting, especially during Turkey, was called the Council. And the Council, from what I understand, it actually had roots that go back into the 90s and possibly the 80s, as you were mentioning, the anti-Saddam training camp in the eastern border. Let's talk about that a little bit, because you know way more about that.
So, yeah, because like, I'm forgetting his name. The guy that we went after, we ended up getting his wife, who orchestrated the first World Trade Center. Abdul Rahman, yes.
Yeah.
So he had been a big figure in trying to kill Saddam and his sons, and I know that one of the assassination attempts they put through is the one that maimed Uday. I think he lost a testicle, had something, but I mean, they went. I mean, they tried to kill all of them, a lot, and that honestly is all that stuff is what was out. Turkey Bowl, all that was the leftover remnants, you know, and so because of the way it sat out there on the Iranian border, nobody went out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I started reading about, I think it was like a year before we were there, SF just happened to like roll through there and kind of was like, hey, what's going on? And it turned into a firefight, and everybody kind of forgot about it. And I think because it was so remote, the access to Iran, even though Iran's such a part of this, and it doesn't make sense what Iran was doing, because they wanted the Shias, but then they still helped the Sunnis, and Iran just wanted chaos, and so, but I mean, there was a lot of money and a lot of weapons coming from Iran for not just the Shias and the Mahdis. I mean, everybody there that you're talking about was Al Qaeda or ISIS eventually. You know, they were Sunni side, Rahman, all of them, and that council, I think they called it the Shura Council. Eventually, was their name, and one of those guys ended up marrying Zarqawi's sister, and so that's how, you know, all this stuff is like playing in, and I mean, I heard, you know, we had Sergeant Major Edgar Rohn. You know, I was not there during that initial turkey bowl. I'd gone home for leave, but I mean, I still think that we are very lucky that it didn't turn out worse, because I think the majority of those there were high value targets there. Mm-hmm. There were the reason that fight was like that was so that they could escape to Iran. Yeah. And I think this is conjecture, but I think had that helicopter landed with a force ready to go, we would have possibly killed some high value targets, but it would have been a hornet's nest. That's what I've always believed. That's what I was told by some informants later on down the line. But that's an interesting, you know, there's a lot of interesting stuff that came out of that whole place that I was a part of. And I tell this story. Had old Big Baby with me, remember?
Noah Randolph.
Yeah, and we went to go, I don't know how many of these helicopter rides I did to go bust one of these training camps, and they were always a dry hole. And we were coming in that one night. I have no idea if you were with us or not on this, but I know Randolph was. And it's the night we found the Al Qaeda training camp. Do you remember this? So, okay.
Maybe not, but
I still have it. I have
my memories.
You know, but okay, so we're coming in, everybody's just bored, we're looking out, we're like, another dry hole for the stupid Al Qaeda camp. And as we're coming, we start seeing lights go everywhere, and we start seeing fires being set, and they're not shooting at us, they're setting stuff on fire. And so we kind of split, and I've got my guys, and there was a guy running into a room, and Randolph just grabbed him, pushed him up against the wall, but he pushed him through the wall. And I turned and I looked, it was a false wall. It was just like a, and so Randolph pulled it, and I'll never forget it, these shelves, and there was just stacks of DVDs. Stacks. I mean, but they're all organized, right? And so I find the Al Qaeda training manual, which is the scariest thing at that time to write, because what it did is you go into it, it would tell you how to deal with the Marines, how to deal with SF versus us, how to deal with FBI. I mean, it's like 300 pages, and it details. Wow. Now that training guide actually comes back here in a little bit. So it listed, it basically told you, it said, hey, look, we get it, brother. And it always talked to brother. If you're under duress in interrogation and you say something that you shouldn't have, the Americans, they're, basically calling us sissies and all this stuff. All you gotta do is just claim torture, and they'll throw out all your testimony, which that's what they were doing. So,
I have actually read this document. I don't have the clearance for it. I have not read it. I mean,
it's out there now.
Yeah.
But so we find this, and everybody's super excited about it. And I've got my Tough book, and I start playing the DVDs, and they're all porn. And everybody's just kind of, and I'm sitting over there, and I'm like, what the hell, man? But there's like, this shelf right here is all the exact same kind of porn. And then it's labeled this, and then this one is, it's all different. It's super organized. And I'm over there, and, you know, everybody's kind of giving me crap. Like, dude, it's just porn. These guys are out in the camp. They're watching it. I'm like, man, this is weird. Why would they hide it in a, and so they're like, you got the Al-Qaeda, take the win. And I'm just, I just knew something was wrong. And so I took a whole bunch of them. I turned it into Intel. They run things through. They didn't get anything. I turned it into DIA. They didn't get anything. And they're like, Kinser, you know, it's just porn, man. You gotta move on. So it's a couple of years later, and I am at home working. I'm out of the Army now, and I'm at home working, and I hear this news story come on the TV, and I go and I'm like, and the German authorities had busted Al-Qaeda. They were using porn DVDs to pass the messages, and what you had to have some kind of screen monitor. I can't remember what it was to read the coding. And so you can still find this article out there. So I'm watching this news, and so I go and I find the article and I read all about it, and I'm like, what did I burn in that field on the Iranian border? What did I have? How many lives could I have saved? And I just didn't know enough. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't. That one kills me because I don't know what I burned, what I threw away, what did we have at our fingertips? We hit a camp that the guys didn't shoot at us; they just burnt things. Like, that one.
Fascinating.
But if you go and you look, you can find that article. It basically is like the German FBI basically caught, and that's how they were passing the information for these cells.
I remember in 9/11 there was a claim about that they had been using I don't know if it was early videos or porn images, but it was embedded into the actual coding of the image that you could open up in like a hex editor or something and find the instructions through. So, speaking of porn, though, I'm guessing that's different than the fat guy. Remember the target we ended up raiding?
That is different than that story. Yes, that is different.
Remember, y'all had to watch porn of a fat hairy man with his wives just to make sure there was no intel in there.
He drugged her before in the video. He showed him. He made her tea and drugged her in the video. Because, like, you know, I used to have to go through all those, right? You go through the DVDs, you're like, okay, it's a religious. And here I am, I'm just like, what is this happening? But so he drugged her, and then you can see her in the video start to slump. And it was his wife. It was the wife that we had just talked to. Wow. That was pretty weird. There's a lot of
so many crazy, surreal things. Like
so the Al-Qaeda training manual. So we go back to Guba, and you know, we've got all these detainees. I've got moose, and we have so many that we're going through and going, okay, this guy, and there was 3 guys that I'd never even talked to. I didn't even have a chance, and apparently that was a mistake because these guys were higher up in the council. One of them was younger, but I think he was somehow married into, you know, Zarqawi and them. And so they get to the detention center and claimed torture on me. So what happened is they got there and started admitting something. Because remember that Moose and I had nothing on them. Well, when I looked at so I get this like 15-6, like, and they're like, basically, they claimed that I pulled their fingernails out with Gerber, but the photo of their hands show all their fingernails. And then when I heard it, I beat them upon the buttocks with a stick.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one more. And I was like, oh my God, that's like number 16, 12, and 3
Mm-hmm.
in the Al Qaeda training manual of what to say
Mm-hmm.
the torture was. And so I literally went and got it and was just like, there you go.
Yeah, that's
But-
insane. Yeah.
But I mean, we never even talked to those guys. But what they did,
Yeah.
they threw them to whatever detention center they got to, and must have said something, and were like, "Hey, well, Kinser tortured us," and you know. But yeah, apparently, I mean, it was hilarious because this picture where I've ripped his fingernails off. I mean, it was like, who is the idiot on my side that took these photos and was like, didn't go. He said the fingernails were ripped off, but he had all his fingernails. Like it was wild.
You've met privates. You know how it goes.
Just running through the motions. But I mean, I get it. After Abu Ghraib, there was so many changes. But I mean, these detention centers and who was supposed to be actually doing the intel for us, they were so disconnected. I mean, you just can't tell somebody, hey, if you claim torture. I mean, it was just that was one thing that always frustrated me was the intel from the experts was just a lot of times junk, and you know, fighting against us. And then JAG. I mean, you know, like here I am talking. I've got we had the guys that we got that gave up. They surrendered. They were firing rockets at us. So they fired the rockets that they had, and then so we have the empty casings, and then we find like 15 more. JAG lets them go because I couldn't prove that they intended to fire the rockets at us. Like, I mean, it was JAG. Yeah, I hope somebody listening to JAG is a JAG. I get it. You got a job to do, but you need to be on the right team. And JAG did more to screw stuff up. I mean, here they're saying basically, I'm in the field. I've got a section to run, but also I'm supposed to act like a freaking New York detective, and I've got 72 hours to present a case. Like, okay, you know. But yeah, that's my soapbox. But
you're telling me that you've never accidentally shot rockets at anyone? I happens to me all the time. I take the RPG out, I'm cleaning it, it just goes off in someone's direction.
And you know, I know some of our other guys had to do this. I had to do it 3 times. I had to go to Baghdad 3 times to testify. And I tell this story because I think I was one of the first ones to do it really, because it was brand new. The Army was not doing this. And so I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. I think it's going to be. So this was the 3 guys, the kids, they were like 16 and 17 that snuck up on us in Guba. And it was me and Bates. We're trying to make a bridge for the Humvee to get across this stream. We were trying to get, and these guys were I was freezing cold. They're in the water and they had grenades and AKs. They sneak up on us. And all of a sudden we hear yelling, Bates and I do, and the Iraqi army has caught these guys. The Iraqi army had come in behind us and it caught these guys. So it's these guys that were basically trying to kill us. They said they were just goat herders with grenades, you know, and all this stuff. So I go to juvenile court, right? And so here's the deal. You get there and you're in Baghdad. You're outside. I mean, the green zone's crazy because you're out in the middle of, you know, and I'll tell some green zone stories that I probably didn't tell anybody because I would have gotten in trouble. Okay, so the U.S. Marshal comes up. He picks you up. You're not allowed to have a firearm. You're in just Baghdad by yourself. And so I come in, and they sit me down, and the judge is this woman, and she'd been in the States. She got her law degree in the States. I don't remember what college. And so she's talking to me about America, and she's just like, oh, yeah, you know, and this and that. And she's just, you know, speaking in English. And So I'm sitting there, I got a U.S. Marshal with me, and I got like her guard. And she's like, okay, well, I know you're busy. Let's go ahead and get this done. And so I start to stand up. I think we're going into the courtroom or something. She's like, oh, no. We do it in here in the office. So I'm on this couch. And then they bring the dudes in jumpsuits and literally sit them beside me. Like their legs are touching mine. And I'm just like, and she's like, oh, okay, Sergeant Kinser, what happened? And so I start to talk, and Cat here rolls his eyes and is like interrupts me. And she's like, don't interrupt it. This is not your turn to talk. He did it again. And her guy took this stick and just freaking whacked him across me. I mean, I'm sitting there and this stick just comes flying. I'm like, okay, yeah. So, but I think there's only one or two people who know this stuff, but my mom's cousin's husband was a contractor in Baghdad when I was going there. So basically, I mean, you're on your own. Like we went to bars, we went to the Baghdad Country Club. Like I mean, we did it up right in the green zone. And the odd thing is, you're stumbling back from a bar to this housing, and there's just like Iraqi families that are living in the green zone. It was, Sergeant Major Edgar, sorry, buddy. I did some bad things in Baghdad that I wasn't supposed to do. But I have the shirt from the Baghdad Country Club, and because it was this big, and there was this bouncer, this giant Iraqi dude. It was just like the most muscular dude I've ever seen in my life. And it's so I got a shirt still that says it takes balls to play here. But the testifying, and it was strange. And then as we got through, I think some more of our guys went, but I had to go a couple more times, and it just is such a herky jerky. Like, what are we doing here? Because I mean, I'd be gone for like a week. I mean, and as small as our platoons are, I mean, like you think about how hard it got when everybody got prickly heat. I mean, that was like casualties. Like all of a sudden you got like 7 dudes in your platoon that could go, and but I don't know. The testifying thing was weird. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you get assigned like this JAG attaché, and they're usually like a young right there, and they're just telling you, okay, well, this is how it kind of goes. But yeah, man, Baghdad court was crazy.
Well, it was so interesting because from my view anyway, what I've been told afterwards, Alpha Troop kind of became a big center of intel collection. Captain Few worked really hard to talk to locals, get a lot of information about that. I know he would send out cards to people where they could come to the gate and show the card and then come in and talk as an informant or whatever. I know a lot of the sons of powerful leaders would come in and talk on their behalf. We would gathering intel, just talking to people on all those village engagements. One that I remember with you was when we were handing out water pills. It was just because Al Qaeda we'd hired a contractor to put in plumbing. Yeah, we'd hired a contractor to put in plumbing, and then they kept stealing the money and would never fix the plumbing. So finally, they gave us water pills. And go, okay, go.
No, they did not give us water pills. My mom got water pills and mailed them to me.
Oh no, I did not know that.
Yes, she.
Oh no, shit.
Yeah, that was that whole water pill purification, like that. I basically wrote. I think I wrote my mom, and she called one of the companies, and they basically gave us donated a whole bunch. But that was all because at that time in that small area, we were losing. I say we because we were there, but that was the main concern of the people. They were losing a kid probably a week to diarrhea.
Yeah,
a week. Yeah, we're dying. It was, and so that in my head, I thought the more people I can help, the more people are going to talk to me. And actually, it's funny because when we did that, I'd become really close with the 18th group, the National Guard guys there at
19th? I think it was 19th.
19th, whatever. Yeah.
8-ball. It was the 8-ball, yeah.
Well, so I told them about it. I had to call my mom back and was like, hey, get these SF guys some water purification. So they started doing it too. But we got a lot of intel from those guys as they passed off target packages to us that they didn't want or couldn't handle. And, but yeah, so anyway, I interrupted you. But yeah, that whole, like, that, I mean, I tried to source them, basically like a water purification. No, so yeah, my mom had to call the water purification.
Oh wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just remember like knocking on doors, knocking on gates, and then this one guy comes out. I got pictures somewhere. I've posted them, but he comes out and his haircut is so fucked up, and you just couldn't keep a straight face. Like the surrealness of everything had finally just kicked in to the point where you're almost like high in a way. And like you're handing out water pills to disinfect water because of dysentery, but at the same time, literally 5 feet away, there was kids that were jumping into a ditch that is filled with shit and bodies. Not even joking, to swim because it's hot out, and it's like, what?
Floating
what
dogs
are you doing? Like, yeah, you're dying because you're swimming in, like anyway. But yeah, then this guy comes out, and his hair is just so screwed up. It's a great picture of you because you're trying to keep a straight face and failing so hard.
Well, I remember another one was like, it was one of the first days, and I'm giving this grand speech to this family, like, these pills will save your children. These pills are the best. So I've got my M4 kind of like slung down like this, and I show them how to make them because they're like, I don't understand, So I'm like, they're giving me pictures of water, and I'm doing it all, and I'm like, these pills, you can thank me later. I'm your savior. And as I turn, my M4 drags and hits and knocks over all the pitchers of water. But I just like told everybody he was going to save it, and they're like trying to clean them up, and I'm like, oh, I got some more. But yeah, it was a pretty herky jerky thing. I think that worked. I know that I got to talk to people that wouldn't talk to me before. And it's like, I work in marketing and advertising right now, and I think one of the things I always like to talk about with advertising is most people think advertising is like a hammer, right? Hit the person over the head, they buy. And really, an old advertising book always talked about truthfully, it's like filling up small rooms with fog. The more fog in that room, the more likely. And I feel that's the same way about sourcing informants sometimes. Like, you think about, this is one of my favorite stories. The farmer at Checkpoint 164 down there, that he wanted to be friends with us, but he was terrified. And he would, when we would sit there, his kids would crawl on their bellies and give us oranges and pomegranates and everything. And I'd talk to him. I'd be like, hey, man, they keep putting bombs down here. I'll give you a cell phone and $1,000. You just call. Don't have to do anything. Just call. And we'll send mortars. No. And I tried. I upped the money to him. I tried to pay him more. I mean, I tried and I could not sway him, and he would still send food over. He still, we would trade stuff back and forth. And so one day I was like, what would it take? Like, what would it take? And he's like, well, my doctor says that I have a stomach problem, and I need beer for it. And I was like, what? Beer? I was like, I can't get beer. Like, I could give you $10,000 easier than I could give you a 6-pack of beer, And so I go back, like, it was like the next day I go to Warhorse, and I've got the trailer on one of our Humvees, and I'm picking up food and stuff for us. And I come back by, and one of the defect E7s is like, hey, man, y'all are out of patrol base, right? And he's like, can you take some of these stupid non-alcoholic beers? out there. He's like, we have so many. And I was like, nah, my guys won't. And then it just like clicked. I was like, I will take them all. I will take them all. He's like, really? Awesome, man. And so I've got Barnes with me. I'm like, Barnes, help me get all this. He's like, what are we doing? Was it Barnes or was it what? It might have been Blue Platoon. I think it might have been. Anyway, we show up, go right into checkpoint 164. The kids come up and hey, go get your dad. And I show him that beer. I think it was 3 days later. He called and Donnie Workman and his band of misfits did a round of mortars down and solved some of our IED problems for a little bit. But anyway, that kind of stuff over time, they have to become to trust you just like customers do. And I think that some of that stuff, I don't want to get, you don't want to get too touchy feely because you still want to be able to step back. But, when most of those people were terrified of the repercussions and because we always left. We just disappear and then, there's nobody to help them.
No, I always understood they had legitimate concerns. The U.S., well, I don't want to get into foreign policy, but, like you said, we leave. And that happened the first time when our troop got stuck out, when we first got out there, we were out Buseda, and then we're immediately pulled back out of Zagadia.
Right.
And
think about
the beheadings happened.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Think about what happened. The level from when we were there initially and when we left, the totality of chaos and death. And those people that were beheaded were Iraqi police officers and Iraqi army. And that video. That was the dullest damn sword. That was. But you're talking about we're there. We told them, hey, we're going to solve all your problems, and then we left. And next thing you know, there's kids being forced to watch beheadings from a dull sword. And so I sympathize with them in not wanting to trust us and not wanting to tell me, what was going on and all that stuff. But
I don't know much about intel collection or asymmetrical warfare, but I did study it for 4 years after the Army. But the mutually beneficial relationships really go a long way. Fear works, and like you said, you can't get too close. You do have to be able to pull back. You do need to be able to negotiate in many different ways, but also mutually beneficial relationships are also really useful. One story that you were not with us, I was trying to talk to a woman in a palm grove because I was the only one that knew any Arabic on the patrol. And the impression that I got from it was they knew the individual units at the individual patrol bases and towns. So if you said, no, because she was afraid of us being from someplace, and I said, no, we are from Zagania. And she said, oh, you're from Zagania. And then she opened up and had a bunch of shit she wanted to tell me. And I was like, whoa, más despacio, por favor. I know this. But it was so interesting to see that because, that relationship mattered. Even though you're wearing the same uniforms, same patches, everything looks identical, they still knew because of those cultivated relationships.
I'm thinking about some stuff here, but before I kind of go into this story, I think somebody that didn't get credit for being really good and helping and doing a lot of this stuff is Donnie Workman.
Oh yeah, Donnie Workman.
He had a really good relationship with the Egyptian and a couple of other informants. And Donnie came in the gate with some good stuff, quite a lot, and he was good at it. That was like the perfect scenario because now you got force multipliers, right? You got Donnie out there working for me. Well, Donnie and I talked about this. We got on the phone one time. I don't know, it was a couple years ago, and what happened? Because I'm in the market one day. A guy bumps into me, shoves a piece of paper into my hand, and then just walks off. It's like spy crap. And I get back, and it's basically this guy is like, "Hey, I'm assigned to you to help you. I work for the Iraqi CIA. Here's my number, and here's the confirmation thing." And I'm like, So I take it to Captain Few. I'm like, is this legit? And like, what is this? And Captain Few just kind of was kind of like me. He was like, I don't know. And he comes back and he's like, I called it up, Josh. It's legit. And so I meet this guy again, and he wanted his code name to be Arizona. Did you ever meet Arizona?
No. You know what? I heard that, and now that you've told me who that is, it makes sense. But I almost just heard it and discounted it because I just thought he was okay. No. Yeah.
There's a lot. Okay. So Arizona. I mean, he pretended to be with a wife, and over, and apparently she worked for, she wasn't really his wife. She worked as well. And man, he gave us a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff. And he comes to me one day and he's like, hey, it's getting a little hairy out there. Do you have any pistols? He's like, I can't have a Glock. If you give me a Glock, it's going to look bad. And I was like, you know what? We took this like pearl handled crappy pistol. It's in that, oh man. So I go get it. It was like I want to say it was a 25 auto or something like it was. It was a strange little pearl handled gun. So I bump into Arizona, and he worked with Major Aziz a whole bunch, and did some stuff. So I bump into Arizona a couple weeks later, and his hand is all bandaged up, and I was like, "What happened, man?" He's like, "The pistol you gave me blew up." So he went to the range to shoot it, and it blew up in his hand. But there at the end, something happened on the day when we started doing the right seat, left seat ride, left seat, right seat. Somebody attempted to kill Arizona and his wife, and they got out of Dodge. And the next morning, the Egyptian was killed, and our other informant. I mean, just like, the Egyptian was always at that shop. He was killed, and the other guy. They jumped over and they assassinated all those people. And we left right after that, so I never was able to kind of figure out what happened. But they did not want that next unit having access. Something happened, and we were very careful. I mean, Donnie was very careful. He didn't, some way, somehow they got made. I mean, Arizona had to take off. He went back to Baghdad to, his cover was blown some way, somehow. It sounds so weird, like the Arizona and code names, and I don't know. It's pretty silly, but it really happens.
No, it's always so surreal to me how personal that little war was. Like, you got the context of a war with an entire nation, right? But then if you have Diyala, and then you have this point where like everyone knows each other, all the players know each other, and it was. Were you around? Was it Dura, where there was a bomb maker? They knew there was a bomb maker. He was putting IEDs, and I forget all the route names, but it was when we were doing route reconnaissance in like March to June-ish. We were kind of staying out, in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, Captain Few, there was this bomb maker kept putting out bombs, and so they found the bomb and put a note on it, and then and they ended up basically they put out another fake IED too with another note, and like apples. Like one of them was like, how do you?
Oh yeah, that was me. Yeah, that was me and Wade. Yeah.
Can you tell that story? Because that's surreal to me. Yeah.
So the Army and the intel side of it had come up with a couple of good programs. There was one called the Easy Farmer, and then there was the Joker. And so if you remember, the Joker was ammunition that would blow up. And mortars.
I have a story about that one. Yes. Yeah.
And so we would pass that stuff out to to people, which I think the Iraqi army stole some of my Joker ammo one time.
Yeah.
So every time I go to Warhorse, I'd stuff but in that just made them think. But the Easy Farmer was a really effective tool, and it was basically 155 shells and different armaments that had a GPS locator in the front of it. And so I could go back to the intel guys at Warhorse and they'd say, hey, load me up, and what we would do is we would drop these off. I mean, ding them up, they weren't live rounds. And then you watched where they went. And then, I would get, a message from Warhorse going, hey, this thing moved from here to here. And there's 2 easy farmer rounds at this location now. And it would be, a big deal. So, yeah, right there at the front of, God, I don't know. I think it was Zagania, because this is where we end up getting hit pretty bad. Wade and I, this is the one, but basically we saw this dude watching us. We saw him. And so I just kept messing with him, and we hadn't gone. We were just kind of prodding that line. And so we put I wrote in, it was me and, it was Moose, we wrote like, you like apples? How do you like those apples? And we were just doing stupid movie quotes. And we put on these, and we made fake IEDs, and they would come pick them up in like a day. And that same spot where we did that's where, okay, so the day, it's like 3 o'clock, we get hit with a landmine. My Humvee is done, and I lose, not death, but hurt my driver more. So he's gone. So now I don't have a ride, and one of Wade's drivers got hurt too. So I just said, hey, I'll jump in with you. And we were given the orders to prod at that big house right there at Zagania. And it's like, man, this ain't, I don't know. This is where we put the fake ID yesterday. And man, we crossed that line and wham, like right on the side. And that one, it knocked me out. I woke up kind of, I'm talking like 3 seconds to Wade. What, Josh, like, get up, because I'm driving, 2 E6s in the front. It wasn't smart, but, and he's checking on me, because Wade was a SF medic. And he's like, dude, look at me, look in the eye. And I'm as I'm coming to, I realize he's slurring. Like he sounds drunk. And I'm like, hey man, are you okay? And he's just like, what are you talking? Like, and it's like real bad slurring. And so that was end up how Wade, and who, you just don't know how those bombs, because the bomb was on my side and it hurt. Don't get me wrong. It hurt my feelings. But that was the one, because then we lose Wade one day and we were trying to get him to stay back. And, a couple of our Joes found Wade passed out at the Warhorse. He had his head down. He couldn't, his jaw, he was so messed up, man. And eventually that's where I basically had to put Wade on a helicopter in the middle of a war zone at gunpoint, making him go home. But that was all within the same couple of days. And, you talk about the surreal stuff. This is another one of my weird spy things or whatever that I still laugh about. When I tell the story, I'm like, this doesn't sound real. Sounds like, and so you remember the relationship that I kind of built with that sheik in Abu Saida? And what?
Was it Wolfman or was he a different guy?
No, a different guy. This was, God, what was his name? Sheikh Hassani.
Oh,
this dude is this dirty. This guy's like a mafia. And so he's running Abu Saida, which is this Shia enclave. Right, and so he's got his own police force. He's like a mafioso, like he is, and he's got sons that are missing eyes, and all these guys, they would slit my throat in a heartbeat. But at the time, they were like, let's use these dudes to battle Al Qaeda, because they were literally, they had little opposition. They were surrounded. They were the only Shia owned. And so I kept showing up, and Sheikh Hassani liked ginger ale. I utilized a lot of the defact, but he liked ginger ale, and so every time I showed up, I always brought him some food. And it got to the point where every time I showed up, he would have us for dinner, and he invited us to dinner several times. And as this started getting more and more, he was basically, look, I know you run into issues with prosecuting people. If you run into that issue, I have a police force. It is legal for you to turn the guys over. And I'm like, okay, shake us on me, And this got going to where I was going weekly to meet with Sheikh Hassani, and I was giving them some weapons. I was giving them, different things. And one day, I go in, I'm talking with the group guys, and one officer came in. He's like, "Hey, man, I've been meaning to talk to you. I'm getting word from some informants that you need to watch your ass." And I was like, "What's happening?" He said, "Well, the Iranians are not happy that you guys are making these relationships with Sheikh Hassani." And they were like, "Sheikh Hassani is really important to Iran's plans." And so I'm like, Iran cares about me bringing Sheikh Hassani ginger ales? And he was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I would be careful." And he said, "Let me go get the reports. But apparently Iran has sent an agent to keep an eye on what you're doing in Abu Saida." I'm like, yeah, whatever, And so he comes, and this is why I stopped wearing my name tape. And so he gives me this DUR, and it's literally, "Hey, there's an agent named Abu Blue Eyes." I know, I can't make this shit up. Abu Blue Eyes is there to keep an eye on what the United States Army is doing in Abu Saida. And so I come out, I go to Sheikh Hassani's, and we have dinner again, and I come out, and there's this police officer who was going around to every one of the Joes and talking to the Joes and starting to try to get, So I'm sitting there, and one of my guys, who was it? I think it was maybe Lynch, was like, "Hey, man, there is this guy who's wearing a private, he looks like he's older. He looks, but he's wearing a private police." And he was asking some questions what routes we take, he's like, it didn't make sense. So I'm like, okay, all right, well, we got to go. And I'm kind of saying my goodbyes, and this guy comes up, and I turn around, and there's this dude standing in front of me with blue eyes. I'm talking the bluest eyes you've ever seen. And he looks at my name tape, and he goes, "Ah, Kinser, you are the one that speaks Arabic, no?" And I was like, "What?" And a little known fact at the time, which probably wasn't right, and probably wasn't, but it was the only thing I had to do, is I had a Hotmail address that was hasselhoff@hotmail.com, and I would give it out, and these guys could email me these things, right? So I had this Hotmail. I'm giving out my.
I'm done. I got no more.
So Sheikh Hassani has hasselhoff@hotmail.com, and he would email. That's how he would invite me to dinner. And so this guy is trying to talk to me. He's like, "Hey, I really want to talk to you too, and I have some ideas." And man, this cat sent me an email inviting me to dinner. I don't remember what he called his name, but I know for a fact it was that Abu Blue Eyes. And yeah, man, that was pretty weird. And that guy, and nothing, that was the end, the beginning of the end for our relationship. It's Abu Saida. It just, Sheikh Hassani stopped. I mean, I could just see, I was even kind of becoming friends with his sons, and it's when I showed up then, they were just it was a whole different deal.
I was on our last patrol up there. I absolutely remember it was incredibly fucking tense because we weren't sure if we were going to get killed at the meeting or not.
It was, but the guy that hit us, the IED that messed up Randolph's face. That he bragged about being a basically an enforcer, like raping and killing the daughters of anybody that was an informant. He bragged, and he knew we didn't have anything on him. Our JAG wouldn't take him, so I turned him over to the Iraqi army, and they're like, well, we don't really have anything, and then they wanted to leave, and they didn't want to do anything, and I was just like, what am I going to do with this guy? He was such an ass, man. He just laughed at me, and he'd be like, and I was to the point, I was actually a day over, so I'd already broke, you know. And I'm like, what do I do about this guy? And I'm just sitting there, and I was like, Sheikh Hassani. And so I put a bag on his head. We drove there, which it was terrifying to drove there because you had to go, oh God, I hated that. And I think I just, the whole ride, I was just like this. And he's just talking crap in the back. And we get there, and I pull up in front. I emailed Hasselhoff@hotmail.com, Sheikh Hassani, that I was coming. And I pull the hood off, and he sees where he's at. And he looks around, and there's that freaking Iranian guy right there on the sidewalk. And he's like, no, you can't turn me over. You have to take me to an American jail. They grabbed him, and he ripped off a fingernail trying to stay in the Humvee. And, you know, now my intention was that he was going to get prosecuted by the Iraqi police. 2 days later, we found him floating in the river, wrapped up in barbed wire.
I remember him. He was detained, and fucking about 4 or 5. Because again, knowing a little bit of Arabic, I made a lot of friends with the Iraqi army, and they kept coming up over and over, asking me to execute him. And I kept telling him I can't legally do that.
I know.
You know, he wounded Randolph. You were with me. I mean, you got blew up. It was like, fuck, man. If I could, he would have a bullet in his head right now. But I legally cannot. So I'm very happy to hear that he.
It was frustrating because we had that guy dead to right. Like we had him, and the JAG was just like, well, you can't prove this. You can't. And so, you know,
he killed the chief of police's daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to get him to go, and I'm like, I've got this guy recorded admitting everything. No, it's not admissible. And so, I mean, you know, Abu Saida was such an important piece, you know, because it was a couple years later, right? Al Qaeda, or I guess it would have been ISIS, hit their market with that chlorine bomb.
No. Okay, this is something. I want to go back on this. I actually have a personal connection here. It's a dumb connection, but we'll get to it. They hit them with a chlorine bomb in 2007. In between the space of time, after we stopped talking to Hassani for like a few months, there was a period of time we pulled out. We weren't really talking to him. I think that's when things got really rough with you. But then at the very end, after that bombing, we went back. I remember Strike was the lieutenant. I don't remember much about what was going on. You know, I don't have a need to know. I would just get on the gun, fucking PSD, whatever. But we went in, and I remember talking to people after the chlorine bombing. So they did a chlorine bomb. The chlorine did affect other people that were in Abu Saida. A lot were transported to Cuba General Hospital because of shrapnel, but there were reports about lung and tissue damage. I absolutely remember we were fucking there and did the investigation on it because one of the reasons we were talking to them was about the chlorine bombs. It was after the chlorine bombs that had happened at the gate at Warhorse. So fast forward to fucking years later.
I got chlorine.
Yes. Oh, and then I want to bring that up real quick, but right after this. Well, fast forward to years later, fucking, I'm at University of Washington. I'm taking my conflict studies course. We're talking about terrorism, chemical weapons, and we're talking about chlorine gas being used. And the professor from Monterey Institute, the guest professor, is talking about how chlorine has never been successfully used in war zone, this and that attacks. And I held up my hand and said, no, sir, this is incorrect. And I told him exactly what had happened, but no one believed me because I'm a fucking fat guy, so there's no way you could be a veteran. And he got hostile with me, and one of my friends at the time, Major at then Charles Bovey, he had been in Cuba at the time and heard about reports about people coming, so he backed me up. But I was like, no, here's firsthand fucking witness evidence. I talked to people on the ground about that chlorine attack. But so anyway, that was my thing. That Monterey Institute.
The way that chlorine is weaponized, it's problematic. Right? It's not easy to make.
Yeah.
It's how they got us is probably a more effective use of chlorine. But like
it doesn't work well with an explosive. Explosives will damage it anyways.
So there was that chlorine bomb, but then after we got home, Abu Saida was targeted over and over. Again,
oh really?
Multiple suicide bombs. Like I can't tell you the exact facts, but I think one of them killed like 50, 60, 70 people. It was.
Yes.
My point is that was a very important crux for not just Iran, but Al Qaeda, because that was the one piece that that ISIS couldn't control because of that.
God, that's fascinating. That makes so many little things click for me now. I went off the deep end with ISIS because again, I was doing the research. We'd fucking been there. That clicks a lot of things for me. But before that,
that was. Wait, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say there were more than one incident, because when we were over there was one of the big attack methods was rigging houses as you go and you enter, you clear a house, and then it's full of explosives. But there was also one that was rigged with propane tanks, but also chlorine with crush wire. That I want to say I was in it for some reason, and I don't know why, because I think you're still Blue Platoon, and you guys went to the roof of that house. Yeah, it was right north of Set.
That's a crazy story, and it's one that when we get together we don't talk about a whole lot. Because nobody died, right? Nobody got hurt.
Yes. Yeah.
But the potential was for us to lose an entire. And so if you back up to what happened right before that, we're clearing up, and we had gotten to be a little. Look, we're gonna find the biggest house, the highest roof, and we're gonna take it. And that's gonna be the command center. And on the way there, somebody shoots at us from this house, and it's kind of my team's turn to go clear this room, right? And so we go running up, and it was one of those rickety doors. Moore is in front of me, and we kick the door to go in. It's not opening, right? It's like but it's weird. It's like from the bottom, and here we're thinking like we know that they shot at us from this house, right? There's no other. It was the only place. One shot, and so we're expecting to encounter. And Moore gets the door open, and I'm off to the side, and as he comes around the corner, I watch him fall. And in my head, I thought he was shot. And as I come around the corner, I remember just feeling this heavy air, I was out. Like it went into my lungs, and it burnt, and knocked me out. And I woke up getting drug out. And you know what's great? Old Major Rather had listened to the intel and had a freaking oxygen tank. Yeah, so they pull us down and they're giving us oxygen to clear it all off. And what had happened, it looked to me, I remember seeing the pile right before. It looked like it was sulfur and maybe chlorine. And I say I was chlorine. Nobody really tested it. Nobody really knows. But it was caught on fire. So they caught it on fire, shot at us, jumped out the window, and they had a wet towel under the door. But I remember I could hardly breathe, and Major Rather, the medics were like, "We got the oxygen just for this." I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You got an oxygen tank. Like, I had never been on a mission where medics had an oxygen tank on it.
Yeah.
And Moore took the most of it, because he was laying in there for a while, but it passed. And so from there is where we run into this next house. And so we go in. There is a fake ID we come around, and there's wires out of the back of this car. So we have to bring in EOD. That slows us down. So these two things were probably also effective to slow us down as they escaped and moved out, right? So we've got two different events that have now cost us an hour. Well, the EOD guys come back and they're like, it was really strange. It was set up like a car bomb with wires and everything there, but there was no bomb. It was fake. So we're like, okay, well, that's just to slow us down. So we go in, we clear the house, and I got out of that house, and I was like, LT, this is weird, and it's our job to clear it, and we've already said, hey, we've cleared it, and people are coming down the road. I'm like, I don't understand. This giant house has all this weird stuff in it. He's like, well, you're gonna call Colonel Hoppus and tell him he can't come in? And I'm like, well, no, but like I'm telling you, like. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. We got to go do this again. We got to go clear it again. So he's like, all right, man. And so Lieutenant Black and some guys stay outside. Because they're finding weird stuff outside too. And I'm with Canales, and as we come into the room again, here come like Godoy and a bunch of guys. They're going up to sit up on the roof. I'm like, guys, I'm not sure. And they're just like, oh yeah, man, you're good. And Canales and I come into this room, and it's giant room, and there's just prayer rugs everywhere. But the prayer rugs are like laid like this. Like the prayer rugs are the whole thing. And we're talking, and I'm like, Canales, why would they have all these, like, he's like, I gotta admit, it's pretty weird. And we're walking, and he steps on something, and he goes, and we don't know what it is, so he keeps his foot there. I lift up, and there is the thinnest bit, like, it's plywood, but it's shaved really, really thin. And it has broken over a yellow det cord. And so this, what we heard, but I mean, that's how thin the plywood was made to be, like, I'm talking paper thin. Mm-hmm. So we pull this up, and we're like, we grab the thing, and there's like det cord going here, det cord going here. And I'm like, he's like, what do we do? I'm like, you have to run upstairs. Do not yell. Run upstairs and get these guys out of here. I said, got to get them out of here before we do anything outside. So he goes running upstairs, and I'm pulling this det cord. One of them goes to a fridge that's underneath the steps, and the other one, it comes around, and I'm holding it, and I walk in, and I just see, I don't know how we missed this. I think it was a closed door. It was, it was just kind of a hidden room, like a little laundry room. And there was like 55-gallon drums. There was like a big container. I have no idea what it was. I mean, and there's det cord going to all of it. And at this point, I'm like, okay, it's time to call the landslide. And before I do, I look, and there's like two handheld radios, and they're on this thing right here. And I'm watching them blink, and numbers are changing. And, I was watching 24 at the time, so I was like, this is a freaking time bomb. Mm-hmm. So I start yelling, landslide, here comes Godoy and them. They're healing me. They think I found a dude in the closet, so they're coming to help me fight. And I'm like, no, we gotta run. And we go, and we run, and it doesn't blow up. And what was happening was the guy was standing out there trying to blow it. And it wouldn't blow. We couldn't figure it out. So we blow up the house, and it's about 2 weeks later. We're back at DOD. DOD's like, yeah, you want to know why that bomb didn't blow up? It was a bad blasting cap. And you know who was giving out bad blasting caps? The Joker program. And I mean, it's either they got a Joker blasting cap, and I don't understand explosives and relays and things like that, but apparently it was rigged to go boom, the relay would go to the next one, and the one there was bad. The other blasting caps were good. But it either I mean, if that thing blew, then you're talking 10, 11 dead people.
Oh yeah.
Because when they called landslide, that was a big deal because they left everything up there. And people were like, what are we going to do? I'm like, I'm not going back over there to get that crap. Blow it all up. Like, who cares? It's a 240. You know, but you're talking about it was either a drunk Russian on the assembly line or it was a Joker blasting cap, which, you know, who knows? But that story, man, I mean, that would have been so bad. I mean, so bad.
It's insane how many near misses, just how many close little things here and there. Like I don't know. My thoughts on Fortune are very mixed, but they like that's who are really.
You know, EOD said if it wasn't a Joker, that it's like a 1 in 10,000 defect for a blasting cap. It's not a very complicated piece, so. But yeah, that one was pretty wild, man. That one, you know. But again, now that slows us down, and
yeah. They had,
did we blow that up with a? I think we blew that up with a 500-pound bomb, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Captain Q called that one in. Yeah. We dropped a lot of bombs. We dropped
a nice house. Nice house. I still, you know, I mean, you were there, right, when we dropped the Moab?
Oh yeah. Oh God. Oh, was that Turkey 2, right? Yeah.
No, it was.
Or was that?
It was that town where they had the bear traps and the booby traps out, and we couldn't get in, and they had mannequins in the windows. You know, they fired some NASA guided missile from Baghdad first. I remember Bennett, his back was all messed up, and so he's like laying outside the Humvee just in like pain. And they're like, "You guys are too close." We're like 2K away. They're like, "You gotta get further." I'll never forget, man. That C-130 can't even hold the back end up. Like it's just like, dude, that was a splash.
What was the Turkey? What did we drop at Turkey? I just remember I was locked in that fucking Bradley. I couldn't get that hatch open for like 3 days. It's raining. And finally, someone knocks. I fix the hatch. Like, they throw me a pizza and a Wild Tiger from a resupply. And then they're like, hey, watch the village. It's about to get obliterated. And then, what was it, B-1s or whatever, B-52s come over and they just start dropping bombs. And the sky just lights up red. And I'm just sitting there, you know, it's been 2 weeks of freezing cold suck. And I'm just eating a piece of pizza with my Wild Tiger, watching the world be... Someone's days getting really ruined. Feel over.
I remember there was a couple of 2,000-pounders. There was, I think it was a variety, you know. But the pizza story is probably I mean, you know, because we were sending detainees to I want to call it Amazon. It's not Amazon. The air base.
Anaconda.
Anaconda. Yeah. Amazon, Anaconda, same thing. Well, you know, it was just miserable, right? And raining and doing all this stuff. And it was Major Sylvia and I think Major Hedrick was the one. It might have been Major Sylvia, but basically was like, you know what? The next helicopter that goes back there, fill it up with pizzas. And, you know, and so... From my point of view, it was, I'm sitting there with Moose and we have all these detainees and it's pouring rain and I'm over there and I got a couple of Joes like holding cards on me. And I look down the hill and I just see like little Joes running like little happy ants. And I'm just like, what is happening down there? You know, there's 2 Blackhawks and it's just like, it's in the mud and it's just like, and I don't know. It was cold pizza. It was, and it was just one of those things that like it changed the morale and the mood. I mean, immensely. And I mean, it was fantastic. Like how much of a sucky day that was, and everybody just stuck there in the mud. And
oh yeah,
you know, and what, everybody get 2 pieces of pizza. I tell you another pizza. I had food money left over, right? You know, and some of it I was supposed to spend in the economy, and it's like towards the end, and I have like, I don't know, $500 on me or something like that. Maybe it was 1,000. And I'm leaving Warhorse. This is like right at the end, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a page out of Major Sylvia's, and I'm going to buy. So I just went up to the Pizza Hut, and I'm like, how much? I have no idea how many pizzas. It was whatever money I had. I said, how many pizzas can I get with this? And so they're making all these pizzas, and there's this dude who was like, who in the hell ordered, 200 pizzas? Or he's like, and I turned around, I was like, oh, it's me. And he was like, what the? And it was NCO from my last unit. He was like, Kinser! He's like, you're the reason I can't get my personal pan. And we just started dying laughing. I was like, he had just gotten there, and so it was just hilarious. But that one I showed back up with however many pizzas it was, and it was maybe not quite as great as Major Sylvia's Pizza Fest, but it was still pretty good. I think the rain and the mud is what made that one just so great.
Turkey got. I remember we had elements from First Cap that decided they were just fucking going home because they got tired of the rain, and I forget who gave that. I think it was. I don't know if it was Colonel Pops. I don't know who did it. I don't want to ruin anyone's career, but he got on the radio and was like, you know what? I will have those Abrams open fire on you for retreating if you do not get back here. Just hearing shit like that come across the radio, you're like.
And meanwhile, I'm over here apparently beating somebody upon the buttocks with a wooden stick, and but like that one. Oh, all of Turkey, man. That was such a crazy. I wrote some stuff about that just like in my journal. And man, I remember there was like a kid who was like missing an eye, and there was weird stuff in that place. I guarantee you that place is still probably a very strange hotbed of because it's been like that since the 80s from everything that I do.
Well, if Saddam people didn't take it out, there's got to be something going on there. Like if Saddam can fucking try and kill all the Kurds, but he wasn't taking them out, there's got to be some weirdness. So,
I mean, it is tough to explain, like, and a story that I like telling, just how chaotic Iraq is. And it was pretty much our last clearing mission in Asada, maybe? I don't know. And so we've got, at this point, we're not really leading the mission. We're kind of letting the Iraqi army, and I can't remember his name, but he was that sergeant major that was really cool in the Iraqi army. And I'd kind of become friends with him. And so I see him in the mission planning, and he's like, hey, you guys gotta come. There's a big soccer game that night. Like, I want you guys to come, please be my guests. And so we get there, and, we're gonna get going at like 5, 6 a.m. or something like this. And so we're kind of setting up, and Barnes wants to go with me. There's like a couple of privates that really liked soccer, and so I take a group. Do you know this? Do you know this story?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so we go in, and Sergeant Major has us in this room, and he kind of kicks a couple of the Iraqis off the couch, and he's like, "This is where the American." He's like, "We're going to make stew," And so the soccer match. There's a TV on the floor, and there's like a guy sitting watching this TV, and Sergeant Major comes up to him. He's like, "Hey, go get the Americans some chai." And the guy looks at Sergeant Major. He's like, "Well, no, I'm off. I'm not working." And Sergeant Major gets in this kind of argument with this like smart ass, punk. these are Iraqis. And so we're sitting on the couches, well, I really added a syllable in there. We're sitting on those couches, and there's guys over here in this corner cutting onions. There's guys cutting potatoes, and Sergeant Major continues to talk to him and says, no, go get the Americans some chai. He gets up and comes and plops down between me and like a Joe, and we're sitting there, and he goes, are y'all going to get the Americans some chai? And he says, no, I'm not. I swear to everything. Sergeant Major reaches over, grabs that serrated steak knife the kid is cutting onions with, and stabs him in the thigh. And he's just like sitting there, like, like going like this. And we're like, what in the hell is happening here? And so, they pull it out, and like, he asks the next guy, hey, you're going to go get the Americans some chai. He runs off. Now, you would think that would be the good end of the story. Like, oh no. But hold on a second. Guys, you're killing me here, okay? Sorry. So, kids it's back to school day, and they're just super loud, and I can't even tell the story because I've got it in my head. I can't hear. And so they start to treat this guy's wound, and in our medic, I cannot for the life of me remember which medic it was. Who would have been our medic?
Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I think it was Kavanaugh.
It was either him or Timmy Tolliver. I do know this story now.
No, it would have been,
but
yeah. So they're treating this wound, and the Iraqi medic comes in and is like yelling at us, like, because we don't know how to treat a stab wound, and takes an onion and is like, this is how you do it. Takes an onion, puts it on the wound, and then puts Kavanaugh's dressing back on top of it, and is like, you Americans don't know you're supposed to use onions on a knife wound? I mean, but that to me was just Iraq, right? It sounds so made up and so crazy. I mean, the dude just stabbed a dude in the leg for not getting his tea.
I remember the moment that I realized that I had gone too far. Like when you go native is the expression or whatever. My moment for that, and I think you were there, was remember when the water pipe at the east gate in Zagania broke and it started to flood the entrance? And yeah, so it's gushing water. It's turning everything to mud. We can't get it to turn off. The family next door is pissed. We lost, or whatever. So anyway, we're all out there trying to figure out how to just stop this water. And yeah, you were there because I remember you had kind of a meltdown about like, I hate Iraq at that moment, which was entirely justified. This is like at the end of tour, and we're like knee deep in mud, and people are looking at us and laughing. We're outside the wire with no fucking armor, just trying to deal with this pipe. And one of the Iraqi army guys goes, hey, fucking Abdul was a plumber before he joined the army. Let me go get Abdul. Like, go fucking get Abdul. So he comes out. He's this big fat guy. He looks like me, but like he was obviously in his 40s or 50s, gray hair, old dude, like pit stains. Because he had been cooking. That's right. He was their cook. They bring their fucking cook over, and he makes this big ordeal about it. He comes sauntering over, and he looks at the pipe. And he's like, Mister, I know how to fix this. And he like grabs the pipe, pulls it up. He's making a big show. And he takes his finger, puts one finger, showing everyone, puts it in. Fucking sticks his finger in the pipe and holds it there. And we're laughing. We're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And like he pulls it there like half a minute or whatever. He pulls it back out, and sure as shit, the water has stopped. And like I remember Jonesy was there. It blew my mind. And I turned to Jones and I'm like, that's not how physics works. I was like, what could possibly I was like, yeah, did the pressure build up to somehow stop them? I was like, no, I don't. Everything I've learned in my life. And then at the end of the moment, we just shrugged and go, well, maybe things in Iraq just work for them that way because they believe it works. And that's all you could say. And sure as shit, like I didn't know it, but we're like down inside, fucking Pavlik had taken an axe and was chopping the thing in two. So like it was just Pavlik who had broken the pipe somewhere else. But for that brief moment, Iraq just made sense, and I was like, I need to go home.
I mean, it was like the stuff that you just, I remember, if you go back to my first deployment, we were attached to 10th Creek. There was so many weird things that happened on missions. Like, there was this guy, and he had an early warning network, and he kept leaving, so we knew he was at this house. So that was one of those times where it was like myself, it was like 6 of us that we walked out of the gate. Like we left, snuck around the back. I mean, we walked, it was like 5-6 miles. Or no, I'm sorry, that time we got dropped off. We had to walk a long way. And he's like, hey, we're going to walk up there, get to the house, and then it's going to, we're going to call when we're like, right, and then the Humvees are going to come after we've gotten in place. And we're looking on this map, and it was like, oh, there's a like just like a indention. Whoo, man, it was a big pond, and we had to walk across it, and I'm walking, it's the worst smell I've ever smelled in my life. It's like a combination of death, crap, piss, and then like a really strong chemical smell. Like, and I'm walking through this, and like I'm bumping into dead dogs and melons and lettuce. I mean, it's like, what? And so Hal was the SF guy that was leading it, and he like stops, and he acts all tactical. He's like, come here. He's like, this is the worst smell I've ever smelled. And here we are. We get up there, and like, we catch the dude, right? But we're waist deep, just covered in the nastiest stuff that the earth has ever produced. And like, nobody wants to take us home in their Humvees. They're like, oh God. And then there was another time, we actually did a Delta raid. And so you had SF and Delta, and our jobs were basically the blocking positions all over. I don't know. This was one of those. I have no idea who we were going after. It wasn't told to us or whatever. Obviously, it was a pretty big deal so I'm in a 3-man team. And we're down this road, and we're told, you stop, like anybody. So we're just hiding like in there, and here comes this. It's like, we watch the helicopters come in. We, everything's kind of going around, and I don't know. It's like a BMW, like a nice BMW, pulls up. And it's going kind of slow, and it doesn't have its lights on, and we're like, so he kind of creeps up, and we get out with our lights, and this like 6'5" dude with an Australian accent and long blonde hair gets out, and he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt with like a chest holster. He's like, hey bloke, sorry mate, he's like, I need to get through here. And we're just standing there like, what? And he's like, you know what? I get it. I'm going to get you mates in trouble. Don't worry. I'm going to go around the other way. He's like, hey, stay safe. And we're just like, what just freaking happened? And so it turns out that night they call us all in, and basically Delta leaves, and they're like, hey, the guy got away. But we think there's a tunnel here somewhere. Who is up for staying? And I'm like, oh, me. So, like, 10 of us stay in the house, and everybody else rolls out. Like, and we basically, the sun has come up, the women are out working, and we're all in. And, we just stay hidden. And the medic, Pruitt, which, God rest his soul, he was killed a couple of months later. He's sitting down eating an MRE, and something starts hitting his butt, and he stands up, and this dude crawls out of this tunnel, and we're like, oh, and freaking Delta comes flying back, picks him up, and a bird takes off, and we get in Humvees, and I have no idea who that guy was that we caught, and I have no idea who the dude in the Hawaiian shirt was. But I swear to you, he was in a Hawaiian shirt.
then it reminds me of the Patrol from Hell. You were still in Blue Platoon. We were pretty early in country, and we were there was some guy who was setting up IEDs. I think it was on Route Blue Babe, and we were gonna take Patterson up, set a sniper team, and do his small kill team for him. And so they print off, 10 Anderson prints off this map for us off the Falcon. And it's a shitty print because of running out of ink or something. So first of all, your map sucks. Well, I grew up hiking in the Cascades. Like, I grew up hiking without maps. I would look at it before I'd go do a solo hike up on Mount Baker and fucking find my way home. It's just how I grew up. I'm an outdoorsman. That's why I became a scout. But so anyway, I finally, let me see the map. Okay, he shows it to me for like 5 minutes. I look at it like, okay, this, whatever. And, but I'm, and he's like, oh, we're going to take this route here and this route here. And I'm like, okay, but what's this circle area in between? Well, it's like, it's an indent. Like when you're telling the story about the indent, he's like, yeah, it's an indent. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I just smelled it.
Yeah, I was like,
smelled it.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, it's, I was like, it's not marked like an indent, but like, okay, whatever. So anyway, we get fucking going out. Yeah, it's not an indent, it's a fucking lake. It's a swamp. That's what was marked. And it's like, who expected a swamp in the desert? But still, the worst part was, all the fucking info that you need, like, GPS grids and points and all that, LT Anderson, I love you. Captain Major, whatever your rank is now, I love you, sir, love you. But he had written it all in red ink. Red ink. Yeah, so we're like in the middle of the night trying to use red light because we get through the fucking swamp, we end up, we're like, the ground is hard. It's night vision, you can't see shit. The ground is hard, and like, the ground should not be this hard. What is going on? And so we finally look and like, we're on the road, we're supposed to be a kilometer away. We're supposed to be overwatching this, and we're standing in the middle of it. And like, cause we're looking at the map, and you can't see shit because it's all red. And finally we're just like, fuck it. We're like sitting there right in the middle, white light, just trying to figure out what's going on. And when he had taped it, somehow he had taped it a grid square up and a grid square over. So the two sheets were like this instead of, they were like this, but they were really like this. So we had no fucking clue where we were. And right that moment, fucking the engineers, route clearance decides, hey, we're going to come through and clear. And, they're not really caring who's on the side of the road, but a bunch of guys with fucking weapons. Like, oh shit, we're going to get lit the fuck up. So we all dive on the side of the road. We're like, yell on the radio, like, LT, you got to call route clearance. Let them know we're out here. There's a patrol out here. And it is the worst smell I've ever smelled. That salty, chemical smell. Yeah, you know exactly. Know. And
it gets in your mouth.
Going around. Oh god, the ground is like mushy. And I'm like, it's a desert, it should not be mushy. And then you feel the hard part, and that's the bones. And it's a fucking donkey carcass. But we have to just stay there because route clearance is coming by with 50 cows pointed at us. And it turns out LT's like, I got him on brute force, you're good. And the end of the story was, it turns out the people he was communicating with were not that unit. So they had no fucking idea we were there hiding in a donkey carcass.
You were saying the nods thing, and it reminds me, it was like one of the first missions when we went out with, the first time in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And we're in Brad's, and like they're taking us to go do these checkpoints. This is still when we were chasing around like all the the guys that still arresting the guys in the army and the Ba'athist, and so IED hits Bradley up in front of us, and they're like, hey, we've lost contact with them, you scouts, get out. And like, dude, like, it was so bad, like, they didn't have mirrors, so we had a 9-iron and a mirror glued to the 9-iron to look underneath vehicles. And so I'm the first one out, and I've got this freaking 9-iron in my belt loop, and I'm running, and I've got my night vision out, because I'm looking, I'm like, basically the Bradley, back comes down, and you're just out there, and I'm running, and I just eat. There was a ditch that I did not see because of the depth perception, and I just eat it and run right into this wall. I'm talking like face up against it, weapon, and I turn around, and the rest of my team, and I try to yell at them, but it knocked my wind out, and I watched my entire team just, like 6 dudes, just, we're all just laying on the side of the road, like, oh, mean, thank God we weren't actually in a firefight, but it was so bad. I mean, I'm getting my 9-irons like cutting my side with glass. It was just horrific bad. It was not as cool as we had hoped to look. That is for sure.
You know, I love that. Yeah. You say, especially young soldier, I'll look cool as fuck, man. It's Call of Duty shit, right? Like, no. Dude, it was that same patrol all the way back. Again, in Nons, and like Randolph, we've been told that 240 is so heavy. And I finally was like, Randolph, let me help you out and take it. And no sooner I got that thing on my shoulder, because we're just tail between our legs trying to head back. And I step forward, and I just go. And it turns out there's a fucking irrigation ditch right in front of us. And like everyone behind me kind of freaked out. So like, what the fuck? Ace just disappeared. What happened? And then someone, I don't know, was it Piers? Someone was with us. They're like, are there alligators in Iraq? And then all of a sudden, you know how dumb an idea that is of like, there's alligators in an irrigation ditch. But when you haven't slept for a while, and then all the other shit combined, all of a sudden now I'm like, why are you asking that? Do you see an alligator?
I tell you,
by a fucking alligator.
Honest to God truth, the first deployment we were outside of Muqtadiya, and we had an observation post trying to catch some guys, and then we had a sniper team. Called and was like, come get us. We just saw a freaking lion. Come get us. And we were like, no. And man, we had other people that saw, we did that a couple of weeks later and they said they saw a lion. I mean, I didn't see it, but I mean, you know, but it was always funny because there's two snipers we talked about, you know, it looked like Chewbacca and little Chewbacca coming running out with their ghillies, and they were like, dude, y'all had like a 50 cal. Like, no, man, we're out with the lions. Like, no, we'll stay here and kill anybody you want, but no, if there's a lion out there like that, we're done.
Were you? Because that kind of reminds me of a ghost story, and I don't know if you were there for it. It was again in Ventura. It was back where the the IEDs and the Apple thing, that situation. They'd sent out a kill team, and they'd ended up in a graveyard, like a mausoleum, and they were laying on the ground, just doing reconnaissance, and they had to stay there for a while. And it was Randolph and Alex Anderson, and I forget who else, but they all swore independently that they all felt like the ground became incredibly cold and just felt like drawn, like they were being pulled into the ground. And it freaked them out so much they ran out of the mausoleum and had to like go set up elsewhere. But like each person, because they came back from that, and like I had just come off block leave, and they're like, "Hey, this weird shit happened. Don't tell anyone." And now I'm putting it on video for everyone. But like all three people told me the same story, and they were all freaked the hell out. And I was like, "Great, now we have ghosts."
I haven't told this story often, but I mean, there was a lot of weird stuff that happened, and the medic that I was talking about, Pruitt, I was kind of an asshole to him. Like I made fun of him. Like he wanted to be an infantry guy, and he couldn't because he was colorblind, so he was a medic. And I mean, I don't know why, but I was an asshole to him, and wasn't that close with him. And but he was a damn good dude, and he just wanted to freaking be a hard charger, and I was not there. We used to do this really stupid thing in the beginning of the war where they would, when they did the counter fire from a mortar or a rocket, they would then go, "Hey, send a patrol out to see if we hit anything." And they started learning, "Hey, go fire one and then set up an ambush." And so those guys get out there and they get hit with an RPG. It was an armor-piercing round, and the round went through the back of the Humvee and took off Pruitt's legs. And so they're trying to get him out, but he was fine. And Pruitt, man, the guys that were doing it, he was literally walking through how to tie the tourniquet to them. But that fire was going. I mean, that fire was... They did not get him out of the Humvee as soon as they wanted, because it was just, this thing was, it hit the fuel line when it went through. And so they put Pruitt on the helicopter, and like, Pruitt got hurt, and no one thought there was any chance of him dying. Like, he got hurt, he went away. So that night, I was at the Iraqi police station, and I'm like sleeping up on top of the Humvee, and I swear it wasn't like a dream. Pruitt came to me, woke me up on the top of that Humvee, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm dead." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Too much smoke, I'm dead." And that was it. And I woke up, hours later or whatever, and they came over, they called everybody over and said, "Hey guys, we got bad news. Pruitt died. It was from smoke inhalation, was what was actually had killed him from the batteries and the lithium all, cooking off in the back." But man, I'm telling you, that was as real as anything that I've seen and touched. I mean, and
yeah,
like I used to always hear ghost stories from the Iraqis, and like you did too. And I remember at that same police station, that was Muqtadiya's police station, they always wanted to tell ghost stories. They loved them. And I remember this is the first time I'd ever heard this term for these people. And they said, one of the guys is like, "Well, you're a Christian, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You know that in Iraq is where the devil fell to earth?"
Yes.
And I was like, "Oh, what? The devil fell to earth?" He's like, "Yeah." And he said, "And the devil, Satan, had children, and they lived in this area." And he shows me on the map, and he's like, "They're called the Yazidis." Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Yazidis. And so, I mean, that was a constant story I told about these people.
Yeah.
Were supposedly the children of Satan. And I was like, "Well, does anybody mess with them?" "Oh, no, nobody. We're terrified of them." And, you fast forward to like 2016, and that's like ISIS went and annihilated them. Like, I mean, went and stretched themselves out further than tactically, and I mean, killed almost every single one of them and took the rest of them and enslaved them. And I mean, and I just think back now, like how much of that was based upon these ideas that it was just a weird thing that I remember always, and I had forgotten the word. I hadn't mentioned it a little bit, and then when the whole ISIS thing happened, I was like, "Huh," But
no, it's someone. I think it was one of the Steves, the thinness Steve. He had told me this similar story. Yeah, he said that Diyala province had been cursed because that's where the devil fell, and that's why, like, no matter how much it would always make produce, but then that produce would be spoiled somehow. Like, it's the fruits of Diyala would never flourish the way it should because that's where the devil had fell, and then it cursed the farmland for generations.
The Yazidi peoples of Iraq are an ethno-religious group of Kurds. Their homelands lay in northern Iraq near Lalish and Sinjar. Yazidism is a monotheistic religion originating in Kurdistan, thought to have been founded in the 12th century by Sunni Sheikh Adi ibn Musafir in the Lalish Valley. His shrine in Lalish continues to be revered today. Yazidism is a peaceful religion following tenets of pre-Zoroastrianism, Islam, and Christianity. Yazidis believe in God and 7 holy angels, known as emanations. Chief among these is Tawusi Malik, the peacock. Tawusi Malik acts as God's voice and protector of humanity. He forms part of a divine triad that are God's being. Unlike Christians and Muslims, Yazidi do not believe in fallen angels, nor Lucifer, Iblis, or Shaitan. Ancient tales are told about the Yazidi people being kin to Lucifer, and that when the devil fell to earth, he landed in Iraq. The Yazidi people have faced persecution from radical Muslims for centuries, accused of polytheism and devil worship. These accusations aren't true. In 2014, the terror group ISIS intentionally targeted the Yazidis for extermination as they rampaged across northern Iraq. ISIS declared the Yazidis to be polytheists and devil worshippers, playing on ancient tales and generational distrust. ISIS besieged the town of Sharafuddin, where 50,000 Yazidi took refuge, capturing women as slaves. Many of the captured were sold into sexual slavery. Sharafuddin was bravely defended by Kurdish Peshmerga, allowing many Yazidi to escape the genocide. Some of the most holy Yazidi places in the world lie within Sharafuddin and the Sinjar Mountains. The ISIS incursions destroyed many holy sites in Sinjar, such as the Mamre Sham Shrine. The extremists' attempts to erase the Yazidi were simply genocide. Yazidis are a very peaceful people. They believe in reincarnation and living well among others, even when often targeted for hate. Thankfully, having persevered, the Yazidi in Iraq have begun to rebuild. A peaceful, insular people betrayed by the baseless fears of false stories. Malik Tausi truly does smile upon them.
It's a strange place. I've traveled prior to that. I've been to a lot of different places, and I mean, India is bananas, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people, and there's, cultures and customs that you're just not used to. But man, Iraq is the first person that I ever saw get killed was in Muqtadiya. I was with the police, and it was over an argument over the price of ice. So this was there was no electricity after the war. Basically, it was like it would come on for a little bit. So these guys were selling these old. That was how they did it prior. But they were selling these huge chunks of ice. Well, the price of ice went up. We watched this dude get into an argument. And I'm standing there with these police officers, and the guy gets in a taxi, leaves, comes back, gets out, shoots the ice seller, and then just gets back in the taxi. And I'm like looking at the police officers, and they're like, Inshallah, but it was like, what? This dude just got murdered, and we're not even going to do anything about it? Like, nope, we didn't do anything. They went back to like smoking. It was just like, and here I am. I'm like, dude, that guy just got murdered, and they're like, yeah. Anyway, it's a soccer game.
Yeah. No, it was surreal. Actually, you're a good one to ask about it because. So the Iraqis, I made friends with a lot of the Iraqi army, mostly because I was trying to stay awake at night, so I'd teach them English on the gate guards, and then they would bring me, candy. They loved to feed me because I was fat. They loved to watch fat people eat. It was bizarre, but they would call me, what was the name? It was like Theodora. Like if I had to say it, it's all fucking consonants together. There's no vowels, but it was like Theodora. And in their dialect, it means obese or fat. And then, the more they got, the more the respect they had for me when we do patrols or kicking indoors and shit. They started calling me Abu Theodora, which was the king of fat people, of the father of all of them. And it was a weird slur, but also like if you owned it, it was like
kind of respect, like
yeah, it was the strangest thing. And but to this day, I've tried to find that word, and there's like no one in the world knows this word. But and then no, it wasn't just them, because like the guys at the Haji Mart, so would sell us DVDs, would call me that too. And I'm like, okay, so I know this is a real thing, but no one anywhere in the internet has heard of this word.
Yeah, I think you get into some of those cultural, now granted, Iraqi Arabic is different, even the question words are different and whatnot, but I mean, it's hard telling, man, but like, I mean, I don't recall that being, I never heard of that, like, I never knew that was your thing. Well, I mean, yeah, if they're giving you Abu, Abu anything is,
they would call me. They call me AUC because they'll take your name and then corrupt it with like some funny thing, and that's like a childhood thing. So it was Ace turned into AUC, but then the Junies would always call me, or they eventually started to call me Abu Dhurub. And I remember it was a thing because like during was it Pericles, one of the all night kicking indoors, and like I was never assigned Iraqis. They would just end up around me. So I remember clearing rooms with like gang and like two fucking Iraqis would just put room after room after room. And it was all Zian and Muzian. It's like, oh, good? No good. And it's like, where do I go? And you're just pointing, and like it was insanity. But like after that, they'd come out and they'd be like, they'd make the like, you're strong, man, but you're all strong, and I'm like, I guess this is a good thing. I don't know. It's a thumbs up. That must be okay.
I enjoyed, Steve liked cooking. Dirty Steve.
Yeah.
He was one of our interpreters for anybody that doesn't know Dirty Steve. So but I got to a point because we were eating so many hamburgers. Like I was like, it's 175 degrees out, and you're like, I can't eat. All I want is like a salmon Caesar salad. Like I cannot eat another burger. And then, Steve would make some rice, and, of course, that's why I bought a couple of goats and chickens, and Donnie even bought that cow that time.
It's the dead people rice. The dead people rice. How we would go around Zangandia and set up a little kill teams or observation post overnight, and every time we'd go out, like Sergeant G would always pay to have someone make him rice. And so one day we're at this house, it's overlooking, so Zangandia, for those who don't know, the entire point of this town is death. The middle of the town is this giant cemetery bisected by a creek that goes into the Diyala River. And so, the women would go down the river and get water and then boil it and cook rice. So anyway, Sergeant G's paying this woman to make us dinner one night, and we're sitting on top of her house as an observation post, but we're right on the edge of the cemetery. And so I watch her go down, she goes, dips it into the creek in the middle of the cemetery, and comes back up, which is rice. And she brings it up in the chai and all that. It's really good, and Sergeant G's giving out portions. I was like, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to have an MRE. And he's like, fucking man, why aren't you going to eat this rice? It's good food. And I was like, dude, do you know where that water came from? It came from the river right there, or, the creek. And I'm pointing, and he's like, what's wrong with it? I was like, do you know how watershed works? That's all runoff water from the dead bodies that you're drinking. And he's like, fucking damn it, tastes good to me. Give me your portion.
It was boiled. Yeah, Yeah. Like I got lots of, I got food all the time. Now we had more freedom. And the first unit I was in, too, we were, that was a mandate that was put down, no eating local food. Oh, wow. And this is a classic great Army story. So our unit, when we got attached to 10th Group, that pissed a lot of people off because a lot of the infantry wanted their platoon. So we were already kind of, the bad kids. So when 10th Group was leaving, we've been away, I don't know if it was like 3 months or something, we were attached to them. And they have this party, and basically it's catered, right? And so they invite us over there, we're eating all this food, and, like, hey, this is pretty good. And, we were told not to eat any local food, but here you got 10th Group and all the guys that are, and so they're already mad at us. And literally, as soon as we're done with 10th Group, they've got us on QRF and gate all this. I mean, just crap jobs the very next day. Dude, we wake up and like all of us are sick. I mean, I'm talking like both ends, like, I mean, you just horrible sick. So, like, I'm so sick. Like, we get out to QRF and I can't even go. Like, I'm so bad. And our first sergeant was so mad, and he was convinced that we got sick because our rooms weren't clean enough. So they came over to and we're staying like at an old Iraqi army base. Like, there's snakes coming through the ceiling. Like, the defact where we had was the morgue. So we ate on the old morgue tables. And we're like throwing up and, you know, crapping ourselves, and they're making us clean our rooms and like sweep. And it was just like, why did I join the army? Like, this is, I mean, we just kidnapped like all kinds of bad dudes, put them away, and we got sick from eating some chicken dip. I mean, you know, and so this is, now we're, you know, undisciplined, and yeah. Man, that was one of the sickest I've ever been. That was the worst food poisoning. Oh God, it was bad. I never got sick from any other Iraqi food that I got like that. I mean, I think, you know, that was a rough one, man.
I was gonna say, yeah, I never, like, on our tour, I didn't have any problems. We had some good stuff too. Was that at Turkey 2 when we were trading diesel fuel and salt for goats? That was good eating too. Just right in the middle of the road.
Well, you got a bunch of guys. A goat doesn't last very long anyway, so it's.
Oh yeah.
I always remember, you know, like, somebody be like, "Hey, if you see a goat in the market, you know," and I'm like, "I only do live goats," like, because you get there, that the goat leg is hanging just with flies on it. It's just like,
I'll never forget that. I'll never understand how they aren't always sick with rancid meat. Just butchered shit with flies crawling, just hanging in the. It's a shed. It looks like a serial killer would live there, and like, that's your butcher shop. Like,
man, we used to.
There.
I used to love, you know, I used to call it watermelon patrol, where I'd always volunteer for like the night patrol and go buy some watermelons. I've got a picture that I just love. It's got Mark is like walking with his M4 and there's a watermelon in his backpack. Like, yeah, those watermelons were absolutely delicious, though, man. God, they were good. I mean, yeah. Oh man,
I've asked people that dish that they like every time you'd be invited to a dinner. That's what they would make. The white women would make it. It's like okra and tomatoes over rice.
And
yeah, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. Like, from the Middle East, everyone knows it. Their grandma used to make it. No one has a name for it. Not a single one knows what it's called, but everyone knows it.
Yeah, it's, you know, it was the staple. It was what, you know. But like, you know, you were talking about it earlier, but like, you know, those big dinners, like when we had it with the Al Qaeda. I mean, you know, they had all that stuff there, and it's so funny to think about that now. Like, I wonder what they said. Like, I wonder what they said to each other when they, you know, these freaking idiot Americans. Like, what?
Were you?
You know, most of those guys are dead. You know.
Oh yeah. ISIS made sure most of that shit. Yeah. Like, I can't be angry at anything that happened because ISIS took up the rest of it for us.
Yeah.
So were you
a lot of those guys,
Cobra briefly?
I've been to Cobra a couple of times in both deployments. You know, I know I went there one time with Jeter. But I don't think I went with you guys.
Yeah, it might have been before you came over. We were in their dining facility with the Iraqis there. It was
that was a good. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
No, like this, it had been abandoned.
You got little juice boxes, and it was good.
No, there was nothing. There was nothing when we got there. It had been abandoned. We were the first Americans that had been there in months, and we were just checking it out to see
Must have been a different
which Bible to move to. And yeah, it was this tiny little place. It was so tiny that we got lost and ended up wandering out of the pub on accident, and didn't even know. We're just walking at night, and like, I don't see any T barriers anymore. But yeah, we were eating with the Iraqis, and the power went out, and like, it has been really tense because I don't know if we had troops with us or not, and everyone had just been looking at each other like, I don't know who these people are or why, and everyone was suspecting like insider attacks at the time. And remember, the power just went out in the middle of this dinner, and it was silent. And then as soon as one chair moved, all the chairs moved, and then it comes on, and everyone is standing up at the table, just looking at each other, and like, yo.
No, I wasn't around for that one. Maybe it wasn't so good. But one of those out there on the Iranian border had a really good DFAC. I always like going out there. I was going out there some. There was like a couple of murders of like elected officials and judges and things like that, to where there was a lot of activity, and they were trying to make. I mean, that whole Iranian border area, it's all pretty sparsely populated, but I never got any, but I mean, that's one of the things that's like, I just showed up a couple of times with a bunch of people that didn't know me and tried to get intel out of them, and
it's a pretty fluid area too. Like, I think there was a Bravo troop that ended up getting lured into crossing, and they got in a firefight, like getting out of it.
I don't think they crossed. I think the Iranians crossed. I was not there, but I think the Iranians were trying to probably capture them and do something like they did with the naval incident. But I can tell you that, between both deployments, I mean, I ran into Iranians quite a bit on both deployments. I've been shot at, we're talking pop shots at, from the posts, but I've seen Iranians on the other side of the border at least twice. So I don't know if that's exactly what happened with Bravo.
Yeah,
I know it was one of those things that like nobody really could talk about for like.
Well, then it turned up in Time magazine.
Yeah,
it didn't say anything about this, but yeah. No,
in Fallujah, we were using Willie Pete nonstop. I mean, like, you had to be careful. You kicked Willie Pete like the next day walking into a building, you caught back on fire. And so like our artillery officer wrote an article in like Artillery magazine about proper use of Willie Pete, and then it came back down to it, and they were like, we have never used Willie Pete, and we did not use it in Fallujah. And I was like, there's a published article. Shake and Bake, I think was the name of the article. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the Iranians could have possibly have been thinking there, but that was probably a pretty big incident that, But yeah, Iran was really active on that border.
Yeah, I think while we were there, or shortly after we left, there was the Ashraf massacre, where there was all the dissidents that had lived in Ashraf City, and the Iranians came across the border dressed. The Quds came in.
Well, okay, yeah, there's to the point that I was saying that Iran was involved. Iran, I couldn't step into those mountains without Iran knowing that we were there when we did OPs. There is no way that Iran did not know that money was coming through there. And then you have...
Oh, yeah.
There was... It was the National Guard team. I'm going to forget this. But basically, they assume it was HUDs. They show up to a base, and they're dressed as U.S. soldiers. In Suburbans, got out, murdered a couple of Americans. We went after them, and they found the Suburbans. Everybody was gone, which means they probably got picked up in a helicopter because there was no way to get to them. And so, I mean, Iran was,
if I remember right, in Turkey, one of the caches they found, I think 6-9 Cav found it. It was one of the biggest caches ever found. But all the tow missiles that were in there had been sold to Iran in the 80s. I think they may have been part of the Contra program. But
now, I'll tell you,
for selling those.
Yeah. So the other thing that you have to realize that happened. So the first time we were in Iraq, we were at an old Iraqi army base. It was outside of Uqtadiya. It was pretty close to the Iranian border. There were 11 bunkers that were dug into the side of the hill that were as big as a football field, like a dome. And they were just filled with Scud missiles, Frog missiles, anti-tank mines, all kinds of stuff. When we got there, so there was a unit that got there before us. When they got there 2 months into the war, 1 month, whatever it was, doesn't matter. 8 of those bunkers had been cut into and had been completely emptied out. And so there was Persian writing all over. The Iran, when we invaded Iraq, and that army unit, basically, they went underground. Iran came over and was moving all that stuff in those bunkers over to hand out to maybe Iraq, maybe to Hamas, maybe to Hezbollah. Don't know, but there was Persian writing, whatever. And we're talking like what we used to do every Tuesday was we worked with Cochise, the old contractors, and they had 22 dump trucks, and we would fill these dump trucks up. Not us, but they had Iraqi workers, and they would drive out into the desert, and we would pull the outer cordon and try to keep people from coming. We're out in the middle of nowhere. There's not people, but all these people would come out and try to get the copper and all the recycling. So we'd have to chase people out and then blow up 22 dump trucks of missiles every Tuesday. I mean, you're talking boof, and as soon as that thing, people just would run in there, like trying to get it was crazy. But that being said, there was, I'm sure that happened in other places, but you're talking, 8 football fields or whatever of munitions that got taken and used for whatever, so I'm sure that some of those bunkers had small arms, and that's probably where they got them, but well, man, I got to get to cooking some steak here in a second.
Yeah, sorry.
You got anything else?
Well, I was going to say, what are you doing these days? I know you got hooked up. You had a hunting show for a while, right? Or you were on one?
Yeah, we still do. We call it Tejas Deer Camp. It comes on Outdoor America. So if you just have a Samsung TV, you can plug into that. But my main job is I work for SecureIt Gun Storage and SecureIt Tactical. We sell civilian gun safes, so we have a civilian side. But we also have where we got started was building military armories for, almost every major installation we've built their armory. And so that side, we build police armories, we've done Okinawa, Kuwait, and there's all kinds of international stuff too, which is a little bit different, but it still uses our pieces. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm the marketing director for SecureIt. And still running the ranch down there and doing, deer hunting stuff. But, I worked in marketing and advertising. That's what I was doing when 9/11 happened. And so when 9/11 happened, I just couldn't. I had a buddy that quit his job. He was selling pharmaceuticals, doing real well, and I tried to not do it. And then when he was going to Afghanistan, I felt left out. Like that's just how I felt. It didn't make sense, and finally I gave in. It was kind of funny because I actually went into the 18 X-ray program, and then I was like, wait a second, that's going to be too long. I'm going to miss the Iraq War, so I went back and got them to change. And they showed me this video. They're like, oh, do you know what a 19 Delta is? And there's this video, and there's like dune buggies and dirt bikes, like, man, And so they didn't care. They're like, yep, we'll throw you in there. And there were, when I changed over, I had a date basically to go in on the 18 X-ray, right? So then when I changed over and I went back into the system, they're like, yeah, there's a lot of people coming in right now. It's going to be about 9 to 12 months before we get to a date. And so I got pushed back off, that quite a bit. But, and then I was airborne. Get to the end of basic training. They're like, hey, airborne school's full. So here's your choice. You can either stay here, work for the drill sergeants until an airborne slot opens up. And I was like, ooh. Or you have duty station of choice. And so that's why I picked Europe, and got sent over to Germany. And I was in Germany, God, a couple of months before we were deployed. But, that was, when I got out, I just went back to doing the marketing and advertising stuff that I'd done previously. And it's been good, man. We've got 3 girls. And, my daughter likes wearing airborne shirts to school and feeling cool.
I'm always glad to see you do well, man. You took a lot of hits overseas. I know we didn't talk about it all, but you were hit by 6 or 7 IEDs on with us at least.
I think it was a total of 8, 7.
Yeah.
I mean, it man. I mean, there was a time where it was like I felt like Muhammad Ali. Like I couldn't think, But yeah, I mean, some of them hurt worse than others. I'm not gonna say all 8. Like that one with Wade that really hurt him. It didn't really do much. There was one. I mean, the one that flipped us, man. I tell you, a lot of people would always talk about the head and things like that, but like, man, that one messed my insides up so bad. Like I shit blood for probably 10 to. I mean, it was whole, like my whole. I just felt like my organs were just. But
that was the one. It left a crater in the road. It basically severed the road. Yeah, I remember. Your Humvee was on fire, and I ran down with the fire extinguisher. It was raining. That was crazy.
That was one of those bad decisions that I made, chasing bomb makers on my own. Where Bates couldn't get turned around fast enough because that stupid road. And I'm like on the phone with Captain Q, and I'm like, "Hey, I saw these guys put the bomb. Where am I stopping going?" And he's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I just crossed into Cuba." And he was like, "What? Get your ass back!" And I didn't quite make it, but I don't know. Was that all a setup just to get me to chase them? I kind of think it was.